Shalom everyone to Living with the Times. This week we are beginning a new book of the Torah, the fourth book, Bamidbar. In English it's called the Book of Numbers, but Bamidbar literally means in the desert. And this whole book is about the 40 years of our sojourning in the desert. Actually 39, because the book begins in the second year. And in the end, we ended up wandering in the desert for 40 years. So the whole book is about the different events and escapades that happened in the desert. The parsha begins that God speaks to Moshe Bamidbar Sinai. That's why it's called Bamidbar, in the desert of Sinai. And we know that the Torah was given on Mount Sinai, but in many different places it mentions that it wasn't just the mountain that was called Sinai, but the whole Midbar there was called Midbar Sinai. So based on this, the Midrash says that God gave us the Torah in three different qualities: in fire, in water, and in the desert. So how can we understand this? The Torah itself is called fire. In the book of Devarim, it's called Eish Dat Lamo, a fiery law. And when the Torah is given in Parshat Yitro, so we see that it says that the mountain was on fire. Why? Because God came down on Mount Sinai, and the Torah describes God as an Eish Ochelet, a all-consuming fire. So God comes down in the mountain, and the mountain is on fire, and it also says there was smoke everywhere. So the Torah is given, Torah is represented by fire, and God is described as fire. He's the giver of the Torah. As far as water, so we know one of the qualities of water is it always seeks to fall to the lowest place. And this represents the Torah is God's infinite light, infinite being, and God's will being revealed through the letters of the Torah to finite human beings. So that's represented by water that's flowing from a very, very high place to a low place. There's a verse that says, Nachal Novea Mikor Chachma. A river is flowing from the source of wisdom. And in Kabbalah, we're told that Torah comes from divine wisdom. So this divine wisdom is represented by water. And in the Parsha Ve'etchanan, in the book of Devarim, when Moshe is retelling the story to a new generation of what happened at Mount Sinai, he mentions that there is a nachal that was flowing down from the mountain. So again, this represents the infinite light of God flowing into the finite black letters of the Torah that we see on the scroll. And the last thing it says that God gave the Torah in the desert. What is the quality of the desert? The quality of the desert is it appears to be very empty, open. And so we're told this represents humbleness. A different midrash actually says that God chose the mountain of Sinai because it was actually really the smallest of all of the mountains that were vying for the job, symbolically, in a metaphor, a parable of the Midrash. Many different mountains wanted to be the one that God gave the Torah on. But God chose Sinai because it was the most humble, and it was in the desert of Sinai. And so the desert represents great humbleness. So here we see three qualities that the Torah is given in fire, water, and desert. Another quality of the desert is there's an awesome silence in the desert. That this was a place that all of the prophets went to in order to commune with God. Our patriarchs and our matriarchs, they would shepherd in the desert, and they would go out in order to commune. Now we call it hitbodedut, to be alone with God. And through the experience of deep contemplation and meditation in great silence, they would come to be able to speak the words of God. And this is encapsulated in the word chashmal. Chashmal is an energy that Ezekiel perceived in what's called Ma'aseh Merkavah, his vision of the chariot. This is the Haftarah that we read on Shavuot. His vision of the different worlds and angelic realms and of God himself. And he describes a certain energy called chashmal. And we're told chashmal is broken up by its syllables. Chash means silent, and mal means speaking. This is the source of what we call the sounds of silence. Very, very paradoxical. But that is the reality of the desert, that in the silence, in deep contemplation, prayer, meditation, one comes to hear the Word of God, the words of our own soul begin to speak to us. So these are the qualities through which the Torah is given. And so therefore we see, since the Torah is a fiery law, that for us to properly learn Torah and to live a traditional Jewish lifestyle, it really means to do it with passion, with fire. Water is always compared with love. And along with passion should come a love of Torah. And if we have the passion and the love, we have to ground it in the humbleness of the desert. So here we have three different qualities. Each one contributes to a proper attitude, a proper perspective of our relationship with the Torah and with God. We should do it with great fire and passion, with great love and great humbleness.